Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Todd. I'm the president of the Board of Education for the last year up until our reorganization meeting in a couple of weeks, and I may be after that, who knows. But I'd like to welcome you tonight. It's great to have so many people here, and virtually we have a bunch of people tuning in, and so we'd like to welcome you to the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum for this upcoming election a week from today, or a week from yesterday. So 6 days left for our candidates. I believe we have some questions that have been submitted, and that process will be explained to you very shortly. But like you, I am eager to learn more about each of these candidates and what perspective they may possibly bring to the Board of Education here in Parkway. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce your moderator for tonight, Ms. Sue Williams.
Thank you, Jeff. I hope everybody hear this okay? I'm gonna raise it just a little bit towards me. Okay, good evening and welcome. It's wonderful to see so many people here, especially due to the weather, which isn't very nice tonight. I will give you the outline of what we're going to do this evening. I want to welcome you on behalf of the League of Women Voters and our hosts, the Parkway School District, particularly the organizers of this forum, which were Kathy Dodge and Nikki Stiver. And thank you to Jeff Todd for the introductions. This forum is being live streamed on Parkway's YouTube channel with captioning and interpretation for the hearing impaired. I believe, did we get an interpreter in the room? I don't know if we did that. Kathy, do we have an interpreter in the room? No, okay. We talked about that, but that didn't happen. As he said, my name is Sue Williams. I am a member of the Metro St. Louis League of Women Voters, and I will be your moderator. I want to thank all of the candidates for participating. On April the 5th, you will elect 2 of these candidates to serve on the Parkway Board of Education. The candidates are, in the order as they appear on the ballot, Jeffrey Spector, Robert Riddy. Is that Riddy? Reedy, okay. Barbara Butchert and Catherine Cholich was not able to be here tonight. Tony Spielberg and Scott Winfrey. And another candidate who was not able to be here tonight was Wayne Hartman. So if you want to know about those candidates, you can online or in a guide, a voter's guide. The candidates will give their opening statements in the order that they're seated and the order on the ballot, and they will give their closing statements in reverse order. The League believes that one of the best ways for voters to learn about people who are seeking election is to hear them speak and answer questions in a civil public forum. Many say that civil discussion of community issues is impossible since we are so politically divided. But we know that you have come tonight or are listening online because you care about your schools and you want to make a reasoned decision before you vote. The following rules are what we use to have a civil discussion. These help us work together to make that happen. The candidates will each have 2 minutes for an opening statement. They will have 1 minute to answer each question that's asked. They have the right to speak to all the questions, including those that might be posed to an individual candidate, although usually we try to ask the question of all the candidates. They will have 2 minutes each for a closing statement. We have a timekeeper who is sitting up here in the front, Mr. Arthur Lieber. The timekeeper will time all opening and closing statements and candidate answers to the questions. He will hold up a sign to indicate when the candidates have 30 seconds left, and he will turn that over when their time is up to show that they need to stop. They will be allowed to finish their last sentence, and then they need to stop. They can always come back to a question that they haven't been able to complete in their closing statement. The audience, we are asking that the audience write down questions of general interest directed to one or more members of the group, which have been the cards provided to you as you entered, and they will be collected. If you have one during the course of the evening, please hold it up and someone will come and collect it. We ask you to write 1 question per card, please. We have already received many questions online submitted to the website, and I have sorted those out to about 12 topics that were of interest. I've tried to include as many questions as I can in the combined questions, although those of you who asked those questions may not hear your question asked precisely as you worded it, but you should hear this topic being addressed, and the candidates will address portions of that. As the moderator, that is part of my job, to combine questions that are similar and let you hear the general topic and let those candidates answer those questions. To want to make sure that each candidate has an equal opportunity to answer each of those topics, and I will enforce any rules that we might need to enforce, although there's many people here to help. Audio or videotape recordings may be made of this meeting, and as league members, we determine which questions will be asked, and we attempt in good faith to cover all areas of interest expressed by the audience. Okay, let's see if I forgot anything. Oh, there are volunteers from the League of Women Voters here tonight, not only taking your cards, but to answer questions about the league if you have any. So now we'll begin with the opening statements. I'm going to ask the first candidate, which is Jeffrey Spector, to start us out, and then we'll go down the line. You have 2 minutes for your opening statements.
Thank you. First off, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, my other candidates, as well as everybody in the audience and who submitted questions. Again, my name is Jeffrey Spector, and I'm running for board member of Parkway School District. I'm a lifelong Parkway resident. I graduated from Parkway Central in 2003. I met my wife senior year of high school, and we've been together ever since. We have 2 children in the district, kindergarten and 2nd grade. My wife was a dance coach and teacher's assistant in the district. My mother was a teacher in the district for 16 years. I had various family and friends be teachers as well as had many students and family members in the district. There is nothing I want more than for Parkway to succeed. We've seen locally, nationally, a lot of divisiveness in the school board and in the school districts. That needs to end, and that's something that I want to help achieve. Parkway's mission, as many know, is to ensure capable, curious, caring, and confident learners and ready for the future ahead. That's what I want to help accomplish. Parkway is an amazing district. It is a destination district, and I want to make sure that that continues moving forward. We need to get past any issues that may be conflicting with parents, with other community members, and come together to make sure that our children have a wonderful education moving forward. And I appreciate you all being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert?
Thank you. Thank you to the League, and thank you for everybody in attendance and online tonight for this forum, and of course, the other candidates running that are here with us this evening. My name's Rob Reedy. I also am running for the Parkway Board of Education. And I'm doing this for a few reasons. I think it's important that you understand where I come from. I am a product of public schools, all the way from kindergarten through undergraduate and college. And I attribute public school to being a foundation for any success that I've had as an adult. My academics, athletics that I was able to excel in and get a lot of help from coaches and others who've led me along the way. Band, being in theatrical performances, everything that sort of came together to create me somewhat was rooted in public school. For that reason, I'm a tremendous proponent of public school. I think it's one of the most important public institutions that we have. Now, I have 6 children. I have 3 stepchildren, 3 of my own, and those 3 stepkids have already been through every level of Parkway. I've got 2 little kids who are starting, 1 in kindergarten right now. I feel tremendously vested in the success of Parkway schools. Since college, I've had a career in business. I've learned how to lead teams, cultivate ideas, advance initiatives, all the things that I think could be compelling and helpful if I were to be on the board. And then the things that are important to me. You know, I look around us, some of the things that Jeff mentioned, I agree with completely. I think that as we come through the pandemic, kids have been affected in many different ways. Their ability to learn has been affected. Their mental health is rampant, mental health issues. And I think these are areas that we need to focus upon. A commitment to public service, a commitment to want to help with public schools, a commitment to want to help kids with mental health issues get their academics back on track after the pandemic. These are the reasons that I want to run and want to participate on the Parkway Board of Education.
Thank you. Ms. Butchert?
Hi there, I'm Barbara Bouchard, and I guess I'll just tell you, what happened was, before the pandemic, I was at work with a friend of mine, and she's in St. Charles. And she looked over at me and she said, I asked my son what he learned at school today. And he said, oh, I learned that you can't judge a person's gender by looking at them. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound very much like education to me. And then, I watch the news. We all watch the news. And all I'm hearing about is, like sex. Like, what sex do you want to be? Whose sex are you? Are you having sex? Would you like to read about sex in our public school libraries? And I thought, what? I'm sorry, it was just startling to me. And I'm obviously very new to this. I've never run for anything before. But I thought, who's going to stand up for these kids? I mean, instead of let's talk about sex, baby, let's talk about education, maybe. So I threw my name on the ballot, and I just want to stand up for the kids. I really want to. He mentioned the mental health, and so my big push is if we can have school counselors for people's mental health. I'd really like to see personal trainers so that they can also work on their physical health, because that will affect their mental health. So that's kind of my priority, And then I think Scott's going to talk a little bit about apprenticeships and the importance of that, so that they don't get stuck having to go into student debt. And that's 30 seconds. So yeah, maybe he'll talk more about that. But that's why I'm running. And I just, I wanted to stand up for the kids. I said, who's going to stand up for them? I said, here I am, Lord, send me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Spielberg.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you, candidates, and thank you, everyone here this evening. My name is Tony Spielberg, and I've been part of Parkway since 1977, when starting in Miss Sternick's kindergarten class at Weber Elementary School. My wife, Lauren, is also an alum of Parkway, and we have 3 sons in the district, 4th and 5th grade at Highcroft, and then an 11th grader at Parkway Central. I love Parkway. I've been volunteering with Parkway for over 11 years in my children's schools and found an amazing opportunity with Parkway called Parkway Spark about 5 to 6 years ago. The experience was a game changer for me personally and professionally, and it gave me a new way to give back to the district that I grew up in and I love so much. My son, who's now a junior, as I mentioned, is part of this tremendous program, and I'm excited to be part of that when asked. Over the past couple of years, I've watched our current school board pivot and do the best job that they knew how to do without a roadmap, since we've never seen anything like this pandemic before. A few things started to interest me as my own children started to struggle online. Out of the classroom learning was tough on them. I started asking questions and felt that we can do better, and that should and could start with me. Where is my focus? My focus is really laser precision focused on core curriculum such as math, history, science, and English. I think our teachers do a fantastic, phenomenal job at that, but we need to figure out how to catch them up. Keeping soft skills at the forefront of everything we do as a district. Start to grow our financial literacy platform so the children have usable tools as they get older. A stronger focus on civics. Without civics, after all, how do you know, and how can you expect young people to understand the voting process? We need to focus on these things, and we need to continue to provide more options for kids that want the path of vocational training. And finally, what I do in my career, I'm a manufactured ambassador, and an ambassador usually works to create middle ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Winfrey?
All right. Thank you, everyone, the League of Women Voters, Parkway employees, the police, everyone that showed up, everyone that's online watching, and most importantly, the sound guys in the back. Thank you for making this happen. Well, I don't even know where to start, but we're really in a mess. A little bit about myself is my family has been in Parkway since the 70s. I've had the pleasure of being involved at Parkway since elementary school. I went to Henry, Piermont, Parkway West Middle, and Parkway West High School, which I represent. I was a substitute teacher in the St. Louis area for 5 years, and I've been a substitute teacher in Parkway for 3 years. I can tell everyone here that the real reason I'm here is, this is a great platform to let you guys know that the students are really doing an amazing job. And it's not necessarily the curriculum that they're having problems with that I see in the classroom. It's, their emotional health and well-being. And so that's the reason I've decided to continue my education, finish my master's. I'm working right now at the Urban League downtown, and I see firsthand what can happen to young people that really they're really suffering right now. Just today, I was downtown in South City, the State Streets, and I was working with a young woman who's 21 years of age, and she's an alcoholic because her family was really just in an awful mess, and so that's really what's brought me here, is the ability just to listen. That's what everything's come down to. It's just some time, we need to take some time to listen to each other.
All right, thank you. Thank all of you for those statements. My first question, which is one of the ones that was submitted online, is regarding equity in the district. How would you support the district's equity task force recommendations, which I'm going to summarize to foster a diverse, equitable, and inclusive community while supporting students and staff to address issues and opportunities that might impede student learning and feelings of belonging? That is a statement from the Parkway website, so I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page as to what the district's equity task force was about. So I'm going to ask Mr. Spector to start with that.
Yes, equity is something that's very important to me. It's been something that I've been talked a lot about on my platform. We need to give our kids the opportunities to succeed, and that is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Students need to be given individualized attention in order to succeed. And it's not just the students, it is also teachers and staff. From a student level, making sure that all students are being heard. Over 40% of our student body is minority. We need to make sure those students are heard and are represented in our curriculum. As for the teachers and staff, we need to make sure we're looking at minority job fairs, making sure that the staff and teachers represent the diversity of our students. These are just a few ways, or a couple of ways, that we can help with the equity issues that the task force found and hopefully will implement in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Reedy, the same question. You have 1 minute.
Yes, I familiarized myself with the Equity Task Force. I think it's very good work that the district has already undertaken. I'll say that in my background growing up, I went to a school whose student body was, I think, representative of the demographics of the community. I think there's a strength in that. I think when kids understand different cultures and people with different backgrounds, it teaches them empathy, it teaches them the ability to communicate well with others, and I think this is vitally important. I think that the important thing about the Equity Task Force is there were several recommendations that were laid out. The important thing is that there's follow-through. That was done right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I can't fault the district for focusing a lot of effort on getting through the pandemic, but now we really need to double down on the Equity Task Force. We need to make sure that the initiatives and the recommendations are being followed through on, and that it's not just a static document. It needs to be organic, it needs to live on, and I think it needs to be revisited periodically. And I know that's something the board will intend to do, and if I were on the board, that would be very important to me.
Thank you. Ms. Butcher? Good try.
Well, when you talk about equity, what I hear is that people are being marginalized. And I guess what I don't understand is who is being marginalized and how they're being marginalized. And I haven't familiarized myself with this document, so I don't really know anything about it. But if I knew how they were being marginalized, then I could address it. So really, that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Spielberg?
Sure. You know, when we talk about the Equity Task Force and you read that document, there's some fantastic things in there. And candidly, it goes deeper than most probably think. When you talk about something in a document that important to the future of Parkway, you have to set timelines. You have to set goals, and you have to set readable data points so that as we move forward over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, that we make sure that we're achieving these absolutely important initiatives that the Equity Task Force laid out there for us. look, we want the same treatment, the same opportunities for all of our students. And I think that once I can hopefully be elected to this board, I have the ability not only to bring people together and create a less divisive climate, but create some middle ground in this topic specifically. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Winfrey.
Well, I'm excited about different projects and initiatives going on in Parkway, such as Project Parkway, where the district has a group of over 400 volunteers that aid in developing Parkway's mission, value, and strategic plan. At the end of the day, if you really want to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you have to include everyone. You know, as great as a task force is, you know, everyone needs to be involved. And the task force may have a vision, but really, we could be doing more as a district to involve nonprofits in community events. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the St. Louis Urban League. We're lucky in St. Louis to have the largest chapter of the Urban League. There's 90 affiliates in the Urban League, and this one's number one. They serve 125,000 citizens every year. They've had 40 food drives. I was up last Saturday with one in North City in the Victor Roberts building. We served 2,500 families, and some of those families are involved in Parkway too. So just because, you know, they might be in North City, you know, we're part of that ecosystem here. So we all have to support each other.
Okay. Okay, I think we've all addressed that one. And this is a related question. I've kept it a little separate from the other. This is from our audience here as well as some people online. What would you do, or what would you have the district do to address disparities in student discipline? And this one, we'll start with Mr. Reedy.
You know, that's a great question. It speaks to the performance gap, the discipline gap, the incarceration gap that exists between black and brown students and the rest of the student body. I think this is something we need to give careful attention to, particularly around what institutes what would be considered reason for expulsion or suspension, examining this particularly at the elementary school level, and making sure that kids are treated in a way that addresses their own cultural differences. You know, I know some children struggle with eye contact. Some teachers might look at that and think that's a sign of disrespect. I think understanding kids and where they come from is the most important way to kind of mitigate these issues that exist with discipline.
Okay, thank you.
Would you repeat the question?
Yes, the question was, what would you do on the board, and what do you think the board should do to address disparities in student discipline?
Okay, thank you very much. And Robert, that was a great answer. Yeah, I like to take that answer. Yeah, because I don't know anything about what types, again, it's very general, so I don't know what types of disparities there are. I don't know. I would just want to apply things equally. That just makes sense to me. I don't know. Common sense solutions. You know, that's really all I can say to a generalized question like that.
Okay, Mr. Spielberg.
Great. Yeah, I think, you know, we have to ask how the student got to this point in the first place. That's the first thing. And secondly, we have to really use a different lens in how we look at students and their behaviors. It didn't just start when they got to 9th grade or 6th grade or 3rd grade. We have to look at what the background would say about these students. You know, it's important for students to feel safe physically, emotionally, before they can reach their full potential, and we all know that. We need to use more positive imagery and messaging, supportive of their issues, and then we can improve, you know, supportive language, as words really do matter. And we also need to work at removing some of the existing barriers. And there's a great way of doing this. If you look into universal design, which is something I'm familiar with in my work with adults with developmental disabilities, this is something I believe could be applied here as well.
Thank you. Mr. Winfrey.
Well, I can speak to this on many levels. I could speak to this as an educator, and I can also speak to it as a student at Parkway that got in trouble a lot. So if any of my teachers are watching, I'm very sorry. Really, what I've noticed in the 5 years as a substitute teacher and the 3 years at Parkway, most student discipline issues are because the students just want to be heard. That's really the bottom line. And so a lot of times, a lot of this can be avoided, just taking the student aside, you know, just letting them sit or calm down or just letting them talk. I think one of the major issues that we face as a district is that we don't include the parents enough in the issues. We could listen to the parents too. I remember a case in which I was a long-term sub, and a mother called me and told me that she's having trouble with her son and that she wanted me to help her. And so I did. And so I called and we talked just about every single day when I was a long-term sub, and we really got to the root of the problem, which is, it was a family issue at home with his father. And so that young man went on to the next grade with better grades.
Thank you. Mr. Spector.
In 2015, 2016, there was a study done. Black students were suspended more than 4 times than white students. Students with disabilities were suspended 4 times more than students without disabilities. And to speak with Rob and Tony and all the candidates would have said, it's learning why. It's not just seeing an action and taking an action. We need to look at restorative practices, really get to the root of what is going on with our students. If we don't understand what is going on in that student's life, how can we effectively discipline that student? We need to take an interest in that student and learn more about what's going on. As Scott mentioned, it's sometimes a cry for help. Could be issues at home, and as school should be a safe place for these students. And when students act out, it's not necessarily because it's something they just want to do to escape. It's something that we need to get to the root cause of, and something that using all of the issues that have been brought up will help combat that.
Thank you. I think we've all answered that. I'm going to segue to something kind of related that someone mentioned, parent involvement. What are your views on parent involvement? This is really 2 questions combined. And what are your thoughts on a Missouri Parents' Bill of Rights, as has been proposed in the state legislature, that would give parents or family members more access to curriculum and lesson plans, teacher training materials, performance information, district financial and contract information, and give them the right to opt their child out of certain curricular content and health requirements? It's a big question, so if you need it repeated,
that's mine,
I
right?
will. But we're going to start with Barbara.
Yeah, I got the big question, the long one.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I didn't know that they needed a parent's Bill of Rights. I mean, that's sad if you're saying that you need that, so that they have access to curriculum. I mean, that's kind of new to me. I mean, I looked up some of the curriculum, so I don't understand why it's hidden, but I think it should be transparent. Like I've said before, the parent is the customer of the public school system, and we want customer satisfaction. It should be transparent. I think I would support a Bill of Rights if that's necessary. I'm a little astonished that it seems to be that that's necessary. I'm definitely for parents understanding what the curriculum is and deciding whether or not it's appropriate for their child. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spielman.
Yeah, I like this question because, as a parent of 3 kids in the district, one of the things that I always think about is what is my role as a parent when it comes to dealing with some of the new rules or new curriculum or the different opportunities that are provided. And, parents absolutely should have a voice at the board level, but so should every other stakeholder in the district. So this is not any different than any other stakeholders, teachers, students, parents. It all should be the same. Parents really should be providing resources. They should be volunteering in school events, develop good relationships with teachers and principals. Parents should keep the schools well informed about homework, curriculum, problems in child development, things like that, so that there can be a partnership between the parent and the school board. And I believe that if we can do that, we don't need a Parents' Bill of Rights.
Okay. Mr. Winfrey?
I believe that a parent's Bill of Rights is critical because, like they say, absolute power is corrupting absolutely. There needs to be accountability on every level, especially in the educator's level. There is a big difference between an educator and a content master. If you don't believe me, you can go to college. Because you can see that sometimes the university professors that lecture don't always have someone there to hold them accountable. And what I've seen personally in the classroom is how much of a difference parental involvement can really make in a student's life. So I absolutely believe that parents have a right to have at least some kind of oversight to the curriculum and be able to voice their opinion to how their students and young people are going to be taught.
Okay. Mr. Spector?
Parents are already involved with recalibration of curriculum. If new curriculum is to be entered into, parents are involved in that in those decisions. There Parkway already has the ability to opt out of certain curriculum or certain books. I'm sure there will probably be a question later about books, but there's already processes in place that Parkway has. So looking at Missouri's bills and then Parkway separately, Parkway's already doing things that this bill is trying to do. Parents have the options to work with their administrators to potentially opt out of certain things that they don't feel are appropriate for their students. We have these because we know that other students should have the ability, if they so desire, to read a book or to have the curriculum. So I think Parkway's already doing an amazing job and will continue to do so.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Riddy.
This question's been answered pretty thoroughly, but I agree for those who've said that we don't need the Bill of Rights. I really don't think we do. I think that particularly at Parkway, there's a robust IT access. Parents can access the intranet and see the curriculum for all of their kids' classes largely. Of course, they can speak to teachers and ask any questions that they might have. As Jeffrey said, there's state laws surrounding deeply held religious beliefs where parents can opt out of certain subject areas that affect that, and there's also some laws around sexual reproductive health education where parents can opt out. This already exists. Beyond that, it's just sort of logistically difficult to allow parents to opt out of various other areas of subject matter. So I think, as Jeffrey said, being involved in the curriculum recalibration phase, which is always ongoing, is an important aspect of where parents can become involved, and just getting to know the teacher, talking about the curriculum and asking questions, asking the student questions. These are all great ways to become involved.
Okay, thank you. The next question's somewhat related. This is a question regarding concepts such as sexual orientation, gender dysphoria, sexual reassignment. The questioner asks, should these types of concepts be a part of the curriculum for our K through 3 students? And I will also add, and for older students, this will be part, if you think it's appropriate. So I think we are going to start with Mr. Spielberg.
Sure.
You got a good one.
K through 3 is certainly different than K through 12, so I just want to make sure that that we make sure that we're talking about that. Look, Parkway's done a really great job of offering the opportunity to opt out of certain subjects if the parents feel like it's necessary. I believe that that is appropriate and something that Parkway should carry forward. I believe that it is okay for children to learn about these things. We've never opted our kids out of anything. As a matter of fact, today, it's funny that this question comes to me, is my 4th grader was actually called to the principal the first time since he's been at Highcroft, and his older brother had just learned, they were learning about the human reproductive system in the 5th grade. And he had gone to the computer and he'd heard his brother say something, and he typed in a word that he had heard, and the teacher saw it, and I just said, my wife calls me, I'm like, oh man. But you know what, it's okay, we're okay with that, but I do think that the parents should have the right to opt out of these things. I think it's absolutely important, and something that Parkway has done a great job at, and we should carry it forward.
Okay. Mr. Winfrey.
Yeah, parents, like I said, should have the ability to understand the curriculum of what their young people are getting involved in, should be able to opt out. Like in the classroom, like I said, I could speak from personal experience. The young people are very intelligent. They'll find out sooner or later. They have phones. This is not, the 1950s anymore. So we also have to be realistic as adults too, to what the young people are exposed to. And so we need to be able to have open and even difficult conversations with them too. That's really what this should be focused on about, is how do we have conversations with young people with the stuff they're struggling with. If you guys are familiar with Catcher in the Rye, that book was banned. And all that did was create more hype around it too. So we also have to be very careful that, if we're banning stuff, all it's going to do is bring more awareness to it. So being realistic, it's really more about having conversations with young people and having that open dialogue and being honest with them. That's really what this should be about.
Thank you. Mr. Spector, same question.
As Tony had mentioned, obviously, we've already got policies in place that would allow a parent to opt out if, again, they feel uncomfortable with the subject. I personally don't believe we should stop teaching these subjects. Our students are learning things earlier than I ever did when I graduated from school. And again, we are trying to prepare our students, yes, for beyond school, but while they're in school. If they don't hear it at school, there's a chance they may hear it outside of school. We need to make sure our children are prepared. And again, if as a parent you believe it is inappropriate for your child, then you have the ability to opt out, and which you should have that ability. But to answer the question, I don't think we should be changing the curriculum and removing it.
Okay, Mr. Reedy?
When you talk about equity and inclusion, I firmly believe that includes the LGBTQIA+ community as well. I'm very reluctant to agree to any kind of policy that would remove a teacher's ability to talk about all different types of students and parents at school. Of course, there's no formal sexual education training in K through 3. But what about a student who has gay parents, same-sex parents, and it's time for them to draw a family picture? Are we talking about a rule that would not allow them to draw their same-sex parents on their family picture? I wouldn't be in favor of that. I'm just very concerned about talking about legislating rules around how teachers teach. I think the policies we have right now are strong and have the school moving in the right direction. We can always re-examine them, but I don't think there's any need for wholesale change right now.
Okay, Ms. Bichard?
Would you repeat the question for me,
Yes.
please?
Should concepts such as sexual orientation, gender dysphoria, sexual reassignment be part of the curriculum for K through 3 students? And then I added on or for older students.
Okay, yeah, no. Sorry. I'm sorry. Math, science, civics, history, no, that's a no for me. That's all.
That's your answer?
That's all.
Short and sweet. And I have to ask the audience to please refrain from applauding during the time of the forum, but at the end, you certainly may do that. So, well, I have another one on this similar topic, because there were a lot of questions on this. There were more than 6 questions submitted and several here in the on the forum tonight that I want to be sure we get to these. So several people have asked the question, what is your position regarding transgender students participating in sports and access to bathrooms and locker rooms that conform with their gender identity? And let's see, I want to be sure we start with Mr. Winfrey on this one. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I heard it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tough because, as an educator and as a member of the Urban League, we're here to support all sexual identities. So with that being said, I support transgender in any shape or form. So if they use the restrooms, they should have the right, and they should have the right to choose what sports they would like to play in the district.
Thank you. Mr. Spector?
As well as an advocate for the LGBTQ plus community, I support gender-neutral bathrooms. I use a gender-neutral bathroom at the airport. I use a gender-neutral bathroom at the store. I take my daughter, who can't go to the bathroom by herself, into a gender-neutral bathroom. I don't have an issue with the gender-neutral bathroom. We want our kids to be safe. We want our kids to feel included. With regards to sports, I see both sides to the argument. There are biological agents that come into play. I understand both sides, but again, it does boil down to the students feeling safe at school. And if they don't feel safe in their own skin, and they feel that they should be able to play a sport that is designated to a different sex, I have no issues with that. But again, it's all about safety for our students.
Thank you. Mr. Reedy?
As I said earlier, I'm an advocate and an ally for the LGBTQIA+ community. And with that in mind, I think they should all feel included. They should feel like they're part of the Parkway mission, they're part of the Parkway family. And to do that, there have to be some liberties granted to them. And I do think that gender-neutral bathrooms make sense. I am also a proponent of that. And look, for sports, I don't think we have that completely figured out right now. I think it should be approached on a case-by-case basis. I think we need to be very careful about forming rigid policy. You look at our country right now, there's laws going in place all around the country, and I've been emboldened by the fact that I've seen a few governors, I'll just say Republican governors, who have vetoed bills who have wanted to outlaw transgender in sport. And I think they've said, and I agree with, it should be handled case by case. There should be conversations with all of the stakeholders in the community to see what makes the most sense. We want kids to feel like they're part of a sporting environment, no matter what their sexual orientation is. But it should be done in a fair way. I agree with that.
Okay, Ms. Butcher?
Hi, thank you. Well, I like Robert's answer because I don't like generalizations. And specifically, I do think case by case is good. In general, though, no, I'm not in favor of them competing in opposite sex sports. And I like the, I like the idea of a gender neutral bathroom. I mean, if that's your thing, use a gender neutral bathroom. I mean, I had a friend who had a transgender son, and like nobody knew. Like I didn't even know. Like maybe I don't know. I'm confused by the whole issue. Thank you.
I'd like to say that I'm an advocate for all people. With that being said, I do not support transgender athletes in a different, if you were born a female, you play the woman's sport, and if you're born a male, you play a male sport. That's where I stand on that. I don't believe that the crossover should be there. I don't think it's fair to women. I don't think it's fair to men. And the women have worked so hard for so many years to achieve so many great things. And to do this at this point, I just don't agree with it. When it comes to the transgender bathrooms, a gender-neutral bathroom is fine with me. I have no problem with that. I don't think anybody should have a problem with that. So I'm not sure why that's even a question here. I believe that Parkway offers the great opportunities already for that, and I believe that should be the pathway forward if that's what we need to do.
Okay, thank you. I think we've covered a variety of those questions. Now we come to sort of the elephant in the room. This is the question that had the most questions asked about, the topic rather, that had the most questions, and it was worded by some as critical race theory. I'm going to ask the question that I thought was the most kind of neutral in a sense, although you may not agree, that doesn't actually use the term CRT. But here is the question that I chose to ask you from our list. Should a balanced account of our nation's historical treatment of people of color be taught in the classroom? And how much autonomy would you allow individual teachers, especially U.S. history teachers, as well as schools, over curriculum decisions and materials to be used? So it's a big question. And we're going to start that one with Mr. Spector. Go back to you.
Yes, so to answer the first part of the question, yes, we should be teaching the history of our nation. I know we're not using critical race theory, but I can tell you Parkway doesn't teach critical race theory. I'm an attorney by trade. It is a legal scholar postgraduate course. It is not something that Parkway teaches. We need to be teaching about our history and how our history was shaped and how it has changed how we live. And that doesn't just mean 50 years ago. That means something that happened yesterday. That means something that happened a week ago, something that will potentially happen a year from now, is learning about that. Whether the autonomy, we have a set curriculum. Our teachers should all be teaching the curriculum. Teachers should not be necessarily taking that curriculum into their own hands. If there are instances where the curriculum appears to not be taught, that needs to be addressed. And again, on a case-by-case basis, as similar as we've talked about with other topics.
Thank you. Mr. Reedy.
Yes, I think that our nation's history, our world history, should be taught with all of the unvarnished truths that go along with it, all the wrinkles that go along with it. I think it would be a disservice to the children to sugarcoat any aspect of history. I truly do. And I realize that makes some people feel uncomfortable, but I think it's important to society that we take that approach. As far as teachers going sort of off the rails as it comes to following curriculum, of course, I think that the curriculum is set forth in many ways by the state. The school districts are able to put their touch on it in certain ways, and then it's up to the teachers to follow that curriculum. So I don't completely understand, there's a little vagary in that question, but I think teachers should follow along with the curriculum that is put forth in front of them.
Thank you. Well, again, yeah, it's very vague because, you say critical race theory, what does that mean? It's, a lot of people here are anti-white. And, it's not specific. I would have to actually look at what the curriculum is to make a firm decision. I agree, we should teach history, but I don't want to teach white people to feel bad about themselves. It should be equitable in all ways. And as far as the autonomy goes, I don't know, I think you should stick to the curriculum. That's why there's a curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Rob, I learned a new word tonight, a lot of vagary, because I actually love the word vagary. I think there is a lot of vagary in this question, and I think that, when we talk about CRT or, things that people believe our students should learn, they have to be vetted first. And right now, Parkway's stance on it is that there are no CRT taught in the classrooms, and I agree with that. What CRT has done as it stands currently, not that it couldn't be proposed in a different way, but it causes the student to be an oppressor or be the oppressed. And that's no good for our kids. They don't know how to deal with that. Parkway policies are right on right now, and the teachers need to teach the curriculum. And if they would like to work on something else, and I believe that's what there's a curriculum board for, and talk to other stakeholders in the district to bring that forward. But right now, I'm not in favor of that being in our schools.
Thank you.
As an educator, I'm a big fan of balance. I think that's really the key to all this, besides having a little bit of oversight. Like I said, it's very important that young people understand difficult history. You can't keep anything a secret. They go anywhere, especially downtown, either North City or South City, they're gonna see history, especially with abandoned buildings and the homeless. Like I said, this is stuff I work with and I see every single day. I will give the Parkway administration a lot of credit, especially the superintendent, because as he states, the role of public education is to make sure we have a well-informed citizen that will carry on our democratic principles, treat people well, and understand history. So I just want to, give him a shout out for that.
Okay, thank you. The next question is regarding censorship. In your opinion, are there legitimate reasons to ban or limit certain topics of lessons, areas of study, or books? If so, what is your reasoning? And we'll start that question with Mr. Reedy.
Well, of course, I think every school district needs to have policy around what books are on the shelves in the library, and that needs to be agreed upon by administration and executed. But that being said, I think that policy should have a very, very difficult threshold for removing books from shelves. I'm a proponent of having access to all types of learning, all types of media. I think some may be not age appropriate, and it should be then available only to students of an appropriate age. But beyond that, I don't think that books should be banned. I do think that parents should have the ability to limit books for their children if they have family reasons to do so. And that should be on a one-on-one basis, where they can reach out to the librarian and ask that a certain book not be made available to their student. And then the book can be for everyone else except for the student whose family doesn't want them to have access.
Well, thank you. I guess, I'm not quite sure if you mean banning books from curriculum or just in general from the library.
But I think the question, and there was several other questions too about books in the library as well. So I think several questions are dealing with books in the libraries of the Parkway schools,
Well,
as
if
well
there's-
as classroom.
If there's sexually explicit content, then I'm for not having that book in the library or as reading material in any curriculum. Again, I don't know. I happened to go to a Board of Education meeting in Rockwood, and they read some of the content of some of the books in there, and I definitely don't think that's appropriate. If you need to read something like that, go to Amazon.
Thank you. Mr. Spiller.
One of the things that we don't do enough of at forums like this is commend the opportunities that have come before us that when things are done well. You know, when you look at the Parkway Library and you look at the expansiveness over the past few years, there's been some great expansion. There's also been some expansion that me personally, I don't want my kids to read those books. But what Parkway has done very well is allowed the parent to have that choice for their kid. You should be able to opt out of books. There is no reason why this is even a debate anymore. And quite candidly, if a child, you mentioned Amazon, if a child wants to learn something, there's not a lot of kids that don't have tablets or these other things, so kids will find them. But at this point, I do not want to ban books. You know, no matter what people say, I don't want to ban any books. As a matter of fact, from what I understand, and I heard this from Rob or one of these guys at one time, we don't even have a book in our library written by a Muslim, somebody of Muslim faith. So, you know, when we talk about things, let's talk about all things. Let's just not talk about some of those subjects. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wynn.
Like I said, a lot of this has to do with balance and, you know, what's really age appropriate, especially elementary and middle school. But to be honest, you know, when I was working with young people, I'm a substitute teacher, and they're in the library, they're mostly on computers. You know, they're not reading books really. And, no, they know. If anything, we should really be talking about social media and TikTok. That's really what they're interested in doing. So I'm just trying to keep it real and try to be respectful to whoever asked that question. But, you know, this isn't necessarily about books because they could find all the access they want on the internet anyway. It's really about, you know, age-appropriate stuff and finding that balance and making sure that they're staying focused and not necessarily on social media all the time. That's really what this should be about.
Thank you. Respectful.
Going back to what we talked about earlier with diversity, equity, inclusion, we want to make sure that all of our students feel represented. Parkway already has policies in place that allow parents to opt their children out of a book in the library. Parkway is on the forefront of a lot of these issues. These issues aren't issues for Parkway. They may be for other districts, but they're not issues for Parkway. If content is felt inappropriate by a parent, they can opt out of a book from the library. But as Tony had mentioned, as you can see, we've been on a few of these together. I was at a group where they had mentioned that there's a large Muslim population in Parkway, and there's not a single book written by a Muslim author or about Muslim faith in the library. I did not know that. So we need to look at those things as well. And again, having the ability to limit what your child can check out is something that we already have in place, and I support.
Okay, thank you. This is a question submitted tonight that I think kind of touches on a little bit of what you've just said. Do you believe that Parkway schools in general are doing a good job of allowing for diversity of thought among students? And if so, give any examples you are aware of. And if not, why do you believe they do not?
Is that me?
Yeah, let me see where we are. Yes, that's you.
So diversity of
Of
opinions.
thought is what they.
Of diversity
yeah.
of thought. Now, I'm a huge fan of teaching kids how to think critically as opposed to just, I'm not a big fan of them, memorize and regurgitate. So, and I don't have any examples because, again, I don't have any children in Parkway. I'm just here because, I want to protect the kids from all this discussion about sex, and I'm concerned about their mental health. I mean, that's got to affect your mental health, and again, pushing the physical aspect of the mental health. Back to, if we can have social workers in schools, we can have personal trainers in schools. So I don't have any examples about Parkway. I do think that they're a great school district, but I want to keep it that way.
Yeah, thanks for the question. The diversity of thought, I see my kids come home with these wonderful papers, and a lot of that is due to the teachers that offer them the ability to choose these topics. Parkway recently just promoted Cartelia Lucas, who is absolutely one of my favorite people on the planet, to the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Cartelia was a principal for my oldest son at Highcroft Ridge and really taught him different ways to look at opportunities, at topics, along with the fantastic staff there. So what I would say, to this, is that, what, we should allow kids to be kids. We should allow them to write about what they want to talk about, as long as they are choosing that subject, not being told to write about something political or divisive or divisive, or any of that nature.
Okay, Scott?
Yeah, I could tell you for a fact that this is not an issue, what I've seen in the classroom for 3 years at Parkway. Students have plenty of diversity of thought, and I want to commend the teachers, if they're watching this, for keeping the students from cursing. So, they're doing an excellent job there. So it's not, the students really have a great outlet. They can speak their minds. There's no real issues. Like I said, the teachers do an amazing job to keep them from using, foul and inappropriate language. So this is really not, in my opinion, this is really not an issue in this district.
I think Parkway does a great job of having our students be able to give their opinions on things. I recently met with the Black Student Union at Parkway West. Obviously, I am a white male in my 30s. I came from a different background as the students I met with today. They would tell you something different, that they don't have the ability to speak their minds. And I think that's something where we can learn from is, again, as a board member, you are representing over 17,000 students. I'm not just representing my 2 children, my friends' kids. It's looking at all of the student body and making sure that they have the ability to also have those diverse thoughts. I think that's where we can make a difference and make sure that they feel safe and really give them a voice that they may not feel that they have right now.
Having had children go through the Parkway School District and having kids starting out in it now, I try my best to be completely aware of what they're doing, what they're participating in. Obviously, with the pandemic recently, it's been harder to get on campus. But from what I've seen, there is a encouragement to have diversity of thought. There's a variety of clubs and extracurricular activities that the kids can participate in that I can tell you have various ideologies associated with them. I know that in the classroom, having seen some of the papers that my older kids have brought home, there is very few limitations put on what types of subject matter can be covered. And this is the kind of thing I'd expect from Parkway, when they are actively trying to create capable, curious, and confident learners who understand and respond to the ever-changing world we're in right now. You need that kind of diversity of thought to create citizens who can participate in the future after they graduate high school.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's turn a little bit to teachers. Due to the pandemic, teachers have had to deal with more behavioral problems as well as the controversies between parents and the board and parents and teachers over masking and curriculum. If you are elected to the board, how would you recommend that the board offer support to the schools and the teachers going forward? And this should be a question. We'll start with Mr. Spielberg.
Yeah, sure. This is actually a great topic because we know that this is actually happening right now in real time. What maybe many of you do not know is that Parkway already offers this opportunity with the, I'm going to read this one because I don't remember it's SESS, which is a Social Emotional Support Services Department formed by Parkway. I think that, while that was developed, I believe, for the children, I also believe that this is a real opportunity for us to grow this program. It's already a robust and a great program. It exists in all the schools, and I believe that this program will build teams with the teachers, with the students, with the parents, with other stakeholders in the district. So I believe that we are set up for success here if we implement what we already have on the books.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Winfrey.
I'm never opposed to any initiative or any resource, but this is such a personal issue that we're facing right now. 500,000 educators have left this field, including administrators too, I want to state, since the pandemic happened in early 2020. This really needs to be a case that we need to really take the initiative and just listen on a case-by-case basis with teachers. I mean, there's just nothing fancy that we can really do except just, talk to each individual teacher aside. That's what I believe would be the most effective. You know, my fear is that, like I said, I'm not opposed to any resource or any groups, but, you know, you really never know what someone is going through until you just take the time to take them aside and just have a one-on-one and just really, really listen to them.
Thank you. Mr. Spector.
You know, as a child of a teacher, I have more respect and support teachers than I can even imagine. They need our support. They don't need people coming at them for any reason other than their child's education. We need, as a district, to support our teachers. If we want to be the excellent district that we are, we need to attract good teachers. And the only way to do that is to be a supportive group of our teachers. And it's not just teachers, it's maintenance workers, it's custodial workers, it's the rest of the staff. Attracting quality teachers, supporting those teachers will only ensure that our students have the best education. And that's what we all want, is our students to have the best education and the best parkway. And the way to do that is to have the best teachers, and we need to support them.
Thank you.
Of course, I agree that we need to support our teachers. We need to make teachers who are at Parkway feel like Parkway is a destination career for them where they want to stay, and we want prospective teachers to want to come to Parkway. I feel very passionately about that. Although when you talk about this topic, and it has so many different sort of aspects or facets, I think rather than getting granular, I'd like to focus on something else that I'm very passionate about. We've had the chance to talk about a little bit tonight, and that is mental health. You know, you talk about discipline issues, and I think that sort of that Venn diagram overlaps very close with mental health. And Parkway has the mental health task force. They're very forward-thinking in that regard. They've got mental health professionals at every high school, every middle school, and roughly one for every 2 elementary school. I know they're trying to build out a safety net so that there's screenings in place so that we can detect the most vulnerable students who may have issues, that we can help create interventions that then we can help them be happier and better students, and ultimately that will lead to less discipline issues. So that's something I think is very important, and it's already underway.
Thank you. Ms. Butcher.
Well, thank you. I guess I kind of think that maybe the reason there's discipline issues is these kids are really frustrated. And I go back to the whole, they're not physically active enough. And if we have enough money for a social, emotional support system, then I think we have enough money, again, to bring in personal trainers so these kids can get some exercise. I'm just a bit, I think that's very progressive. Let's do something new. And, we're talking about all these counselors coming in, and yet suicide rates are still skyrocketing. We're not doing something right. Let's maybe focus on physical health. That might help the mental health.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move a little bit from that along some of those lines. We've been talking about the problems teachers have had during the pandemic, hoping that we will not have to consider these things in the future, but should there be other health-related situations like the pandemic in the future, and you are on the board, what would be your position on mask mandates, vaccine mandates, reduced in-person learning, a reduced number of days in school? So those were a number of different questions that came in the case of any future health threats like the pandemic. So this question, we will start with Mr. Winfrey.
Well, we're not out of the woods yet. There's all kinds of variants coming probably down the line because this is a global issue. But one thing I will commend, our area and the Parkway, we've really done very well to get vaccinated and to be respectful of each other as best we can. I believe that, depending on the learning, that masks do inhibit learning, and especially with individuals who are deaf. So I feel that, it's a case-by-case basis. I do feel that as a district, we need to also listen to the nurses, because the nurses are the frontline workers and they would know, especially the nurses unions too, that we need to give them some credit. But at the end of the day, it really needs to come down to options and allowing parents to have options too, that they should be able to opt their student out or put them in the classroom if they feel necessary.
Thank you. Mr. Spector.
Obviously, the goal is to have a disruption-free school year in person for most students, to be in person at the schools. I believe that the pandemic response plan that Parkway has instituted has worked. I will be the first to say on February 16th, I was hesitant to remove the masks, hopeful, but hesitant. I even stated that I would not have voted to remove them. I am glad that we are in the place we are. I am glad that our students are able to be in person, are able to take their mask off if they'd like. But again, I was hesitant. But again, I do believe that Parkway did an amazing job with their pandemic response plan. In the future, if this were to happen again, hopefully it doesn't, looking at a similar way of thinking, I think is really the best way to move forward. We've seen that it worked. Our students stayed in school, and that is the main goal, and to have a disruption-free school day.
Okay. Mr. Reedy.
I'm proud of the way Parkway handled the pandemic. I think they took the right steps when it came to mitigation, and I think it was largely with the goal of keeping schools open. I was here at a board meeting a month or two ago, and I heard our board president, Jeff Todd, relay an anecdote where he was talking to a family member who has knowledge of the Springfield School District in Springfield, Missouri, a very large school district. I think it might be the largest in the state. And they had to shut down for an extended period of time because there was simply too big of an outbreak. Too many teachers were ill, too many students were ill. They couldn't keep in-person class going. That didn't happen to Parkway after, of course, the initial shutdowns were completed. And I think that that's largely due to the decisions that they made. Moving forward, if there should be some other medical emergency, I think we should do as we did before, and that's turn to the CDC, turn to the local health boards to see what policies are best for teachers and students, and follow those guidelines. They're the professionals.
Ms. Butcher.
Well, I wasn't there when the board was discussing the details regarding what they thought was right or wrong about masking. I know that I was excited when the CDC came out and they said, if you're vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask anymore because you're protected. And I thought, wait, I thought we were wearing masks to protect other people. And then they went on to say, well, if you're immunocompromised, you might want to keep your mask on. Hence, I guess the PPE, it's personal protective equipment. I'm all for letting students decide whether or not they want to wear that equipment or not. And as far as the reduced learning or I love the Zoom option. I think that's cool. I think we should keep that in place. If a student is sick for any reason, I think that would be neat that they could just Zoom into their class and not miss their schoolwork. I think it's a great option. Thank you.
Thank you. I have actually read the pandemic response plan. Not real interesting reading. Sorry, Mr. Todd. But what I would tell you is that mask and vaccine mandates are not something that I favor. I favor parents' choice, and that is what I believe should be the case. Online school from my house was not great. It required my wife Lauren to stay home, or me to stay home, and that was a problem for us because not both of our jobs were shut down. So it really is difficult. When you talk about the threshold of 2.5% in our current pandemic plan, I believe that if we're going to have a threshold, it should be a little bit higher than that. When you look at the National Governors Association, which actually they take all the states' data per state, what they have agreed on, and it's a document posted on their website, is a 5% threshold plan for schools nationwide. So I'm there, and with the Zoom option, it's absolutely great when it works. However, if there is no parent home and you have somebody that's in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, it's very difficult to make sure that they're doing their work. So, thank you.
Thank you. One questioner would like to know how you would focus on making up for the lost time for students who have fallen academically behind during the pandemic. And I'm going to start that question with Mr. Spector.
obviously, taking a role at home to see what can be done from a progression standpoint. And again, I use the word progression. We need to, we cannot just look at our students' MAP scores as a way to see if they're doing well. If a student started on level A reading and ended the year at a level D, even though they should be at a F or a G, that's progression. We need to be looking at those things. Every single student took a hit over the pandemic. Some hopefully excelled, but I would say, and this is generalization, most kids struggled during the pandemic. We're all coming back from behind. And we're doing everything we can as parents. The board is doing everything they can. The district is to try and get that gap to be smaller. Hopefully, you know, our MAP scores, even though it's not everything, are better than most schools. We're proficient in every category, and from there we'll continue moving forward.
To me, this question, or the answer to this question, is truly a confluence of academic performance and mental health proficiency. Making sure that students feel safe, that they feel that their anxieties that were produced during the pandemic are being addressed. As a board, being hyper aware of academic deficiencies that exist as a result of the pandemic, being able to look grade by grade, shortcomings in reading, math, et cetera, and having a nimbleness so that resources can be applied to those areas to help make up those deficits. And this is ongoing. I mean, we're not out of the woods yet. We're still learning these things. So I think it comes down to awareness of academic deficiencies that were created, awareness of mental health issues that were created, and addressing both of them simultaneously.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that really it needs to be handled on a case-by-case basis. I don't know if there's an overall drop. That's a huge issue, and it would require collaboration between teachers and parents and students to get them up to par. I do know that I have a friend whose son has struggled, and the school, a different school district, wants to just pass him. And she really wants to hold him back because he's not up at level. So these are tough things, and I think it needs to be dealt with, especially with the parent. I mean, the parent needs to be, because they know the child best. That's the best I can do, yeah.
This is going to be a collaborative effort, something that is, some would consider it almost moving mountains. When you lose 2 years of in-classroom experience, you lose a lot. Some of the things, we have to be more specific. Our teachers are doing the very best they can. We have to offer them a little bit more training, right? If they want it, let's give it to them. Let's spend those resources. Let's spend some dollars on the public-private effort to bring some of the private resources in, possibly to the district, that could help our students get there faster. There's a reason that all of these, with the different learning centers are in every retail spot there is. There's other people that can help us. Let's try to partner with them. Identify clear and specific objectives when talking about specific subjects. Model them with clear explanations. Provide opportunities to practice. Give feedback. These are all common sense things that have been proven over and over in education. If we can continue to stick to these, open up our minds to some public-private partnerships, bring more folks in. We have a lot of organizations that, including folks that build these great rescue teams that come in, like we can, and some of the other organizations that we work with. Thank you.
So this has always been a very difficult issue to, the real question is, how do you engage young people and excite them to learn? That's the real question. So the pandemic has really exacerbated this issue. As a substitute teacher, especially when I was in the middle school, that was the real issue, is how could I reach these young people and keep them interested in education? I know a lot of times this is done by case basis, and that's the most difficult thing, is how can you understand each individual young person. I remember one of the young people was really interested in Vietnam, and he was just all over the place. And so finally, I asked him what he was so interested in Vietnam about, and he said helicopter gunships. So I took the time and I started adding that into the curriculum a little bit just for him, so it just keeps him engaged and keeps him interested, and it really helped him improve his reading scores for that. So I do agree with Tony's idea of collaboration and resources, especially we could be doing more to give resources to the parents too, because I can't express enough how important parental involvement is in education.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a question, there's one of the questions directed to several of you, but I'm going to address it to all of you. Yard signage and ads indicate that a block of candidates has been endorsed by the PNEA or perhaps another organization. I haven't seen the signs, so. How is it not a conflict of interest for those who are endorsed by the PNEA union to support you during your campaign, and then if you are elected, you would turn around and negotiate valuable contracts with the union, including teacher pay increases, et cetera? I'd like to ask Mr. Reedy to answer that first.
All right. Well, it's my belief that the Parkway NEA is, of course, they are the group that represents the teachers when it comes to collective bargaining. That's true. But I believe that that group has the children's best interest in mind as well. You know, when you look at a group that wants to advocate for reduced classroom size, you look at a group that wants to look at allocating more resources to teachers' ability to teach students, that's the NEA. I believe in that group. As far as conflict of interest, you know, there are ethic rules in place around how donations can exist, how endorsements can exist, and it is perfectly fair and reasonable for them to endorse a candidate, and that is the way it exists right now. So I embrace their endorsement, and I don't feel like it would sway me one way or another when it came to making good decisions for the district.
Thank you. I'd like to give all the candidates a chance to answer that. Barbara, would you like to comment on that?
Oh, right. Well, I do remember when I got my name on the ballot, I was contacted by a couple of different groups, and I just ignored it because I just want to represent the parents.
Okay,
That's all.
thank you.
This
Mr.
is a very emotionally charged topic for me because my family, myself, people that know me have all been attacked by folks that support the PNEA. And you know, in talking with Pat McPartland initially and going through the PNEA interviews, I had asked, you know, specifically to speak with the teachers and the union representatives after the call. Pat was phenomenal. He is very good at what he does. However, not one of those representatives returned my call. Because when they asked me the question, what did I think about unions nationally? Or what did I think about the unions? There was a lot going on in the city of Chicago. I have several friends that are teachers up there. They were being locked out of their schools by the unions. That is inappropriate. That is unfair. And when you talk about the teachers not able to endorse candidates, there are plenty of teachers that would not agree with the PNA endorsements. I like these guys. There's nothing wrong with them. But what I will tell you is it allows folks to just go ahead and jump on a bandwagon and not ask the hard questions of candidates. I believe that should never, I believe that the PNEA endorsement should go away.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Winfrey?
Well, I could tell you guys, I'm an educator and I wasn't endorsed by them, so. just gives you an idea. But I do feel that it's important that we all try to work together collaboratively. And, you know, it is what it is.
Thank you. And Mr. Spector?
To kind of echo what Rob said, obviously, Rob and I are the PNEA endorsed candidates. No different than a parent giving me a donation. They are looking, or they believe they are donating to the candidate who they believe best represents Parkway, not just the students, but teachers, the other community members. There are state laws in place with regards to campaign finance, and I don't think there is a conflict of interest. I already supported teachers, and as I've stated multiple times, I am a product of a teacher. It in no way changed my campaign receiving funds from the PNEA. And it was not the most amount I received, it was not the least amount I received. But in no way did it change my course of my campaign. It in no way changed the way that I view I will be on the board and to make what's Parkway, great for the students as well as the teachers.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that answers those questions. This is a question specifically addressed to Barbara, but again, everyone may answer this. Since you're the next in line, Barbara, I'm going to start with you. The person has asked, what do you mean by stand up for the kids? Do you include LGBTQ plus students in that statement?
Stand up for all of them equally. I don't like this segregation. You're just a child to me. They all should have the same rights. And if they're not, if they're being bullied, we should have rules against bullying. Yeah, I'm against that. But no, we should stand up for all the children equally.
Everyone else, would you like to address the question?
I mean, there's, you answered the question. I don't think that there's any, I don't think any of us would disagree with that answer. I'm not
Mr.
speaking
Winfrey?
for you, but, yeah.
I'm
so.
just going to go through. If you have nothing to say, you can just say pass. Or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's one good thing about Parkway is it really, I can't express this enough how much of a community this is. I've worked in 5 other school districts, and, you know, I always come back to Parkway because, you know, there's just something very special about this community.
Yeah, I echo the same. No student should be left out and treated differently. Just echoing what others have said.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about equity and inclusion, then I don't know. I mean, if you're saying that a child who falls in the category of LGBTQIA+ can't talk about their authentic selves, can't talk about maybe parents who are gay or trans, then I don't know if you're standing up for those kids. I feel that way. I feel strongly that I would stand up for those children as well as other children outside of those groups, to answer that question.
Thank you very much. This question is regarding unity in the district. How would you, as a board member, ensure that politics and polarizing ideologies do not become a priority during your term on the school board? How would you bring the board together, and I'm going to use the term that someone else talked about here, in constructive agreement or disagreement, to serve all the families and constituents in the district? And we'll start that one with Mr. Spielberg.
Yeah, that's a big question. Listen, we all have to be, at some point in our lives, we have to be courageously uncomfortable. And it's a topic that really is prevalent almost every day in what I do in work, because if you live in that state of being courageously uncomfortable, you ask more questions, you include more stakeholders, you surround yourself with the best folks that can help you come up with those solutions. You know, this whole campaign kicked off for me in finding middle ground. That was actually my website, was findingmiddleground.net. I didn't end up using much of it, but you know, I think what we have to do as a district, and I don't think that the current school board is not doing this, but we have to figure out a way for communication and transparency to be at the very forefront, because without that, we don't have a trust between the school board and the stakeholders in the district. So I would start there. I would start with the communication. I would start with transparency. I would do Tuesdays with Tony coffees every week if it would help the district, you know, whatever it would be. But I will tell you that what's important is that we get all stakeholders at the table, we listen to all voices, and we keep special interests out of the board.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Winfrey?
I agree with that. A lot of this is to do with respect and communication, personality and politics. I'll give you a quick story. When I was an undergrad at UMSL, I was tasked with their Anchor initiative, bringing nonprofits, you know, some of the 16,000 nonprofits in St. Louis together. And I remember a story in which, you know, a lot of inner city schools aren't as lucky as Parkway, and so they rely on some of the nonprofit sector to kind of fill in the gaps that they can't afford, especially with young women and kind of toiletry issues. And I remember hearing this argument between two heads of the nonprofit, the directors, and they got into an argument. And really, at the end of the day, who suffered the most were the young people and the young women that couldn't get these needed, you know, toiletries. And so that really stuck to me, that at the end of the day, we really need to come together and focus on why we're really here, and that's to work with and better young people.
Thank you.
If you get a chance to go on YouTube and view Rockwood's Board of Education meetings, you will see a much different meeting than you see at Parkway. What you see once a month is not the only thing that the board members do. I've had the ability to speak with every one of the board members currently serving, and what everyone has told me is that what you see at the meeting, most of the things have been hashed out. They have been thoroughly reviewed, looked at. These are things that don't necessarily need to be done at a public meeting. So when I know there's a lot of people who say, oh, it's always going to be a 7-0 vote. Well, that's because the issues that certain board members have had has already been discussed with the board. Those aren't things that need to be yelled at or screamed at a public meeting like you will see at other school districts. We are very lucky to have the cohesive group that we have. And I know myself and any of the candidates on this board that hopefully we make it, that's all they want, is to not disrupt anything and continue with that seamlessness.
I'm really glad this question was asked. Of course, I'm aware of the divisiveness and the extreme polarization that exists in our country and in our local community right now. And although in my modest campaign, I've only really been able to focus on some of the issues that are most important to me, I am very aware of this. And if I were on the board, it's something that would be front and center for me, because this is when you get into the actual heavy lifting of working to advance initiatives for the kids. So something I'll tell you is that I've done a lot of research lately, reading podcasts on folks who are focused on this idea of reducing or minimizing tribalism. The idea that you don't have to be on two different sides of an issue. Some of this focuses on an idea called cognitive empathy. Many of you are probably aware of emotional empathy, trying to understand the feelings of others, but cognitive empathy is trying to understand the thoughts of others, why they're thinking a certain thing. You don't necessarily have to agree with it, but if you at least try to understand where another person is coming from, then you can have a frank and open discussion and try to find some common ground.
Thank you.
I've only been to one Board of Education meeting, and it was in Rockwood, and it was something. I just don't even know why politics are even in education. I just want to focus on educate the children, and of course, make them physically healthy. That would be great. I'd love to add more, again, personal trainers. If we can have social workers for their social emotional learning, we can get them into the gym.
Okay, I think you're the last person on that one, right? I have one question from the audience here. Interestingly enough, of all the questions we had, this is the only one about money. So I think it's good to ask it. And let's see, we're going to start this one with, I think, Barbara. I can't remember who I left. Who I started with last. I think I started with you last. So it'll be with Mr. Winfrey. The question is, what involvement will you take in reviewing budget proposals and decisions?
Well, hopefully as a board member, the district hopefully will include me in some budget, to at least have some oversight in it. But, at the end of the day, it's really about oversight, and I can't express that enough, and it's not just the board, but, we have sunshine laws and to keep things transparent. So, there needs to be constant oversight, especially when it deals with money and where the money's allocated, especially to the schools, to the teachers, to the unions, or wherever money goes, because at the end of the day, this is your taxpayer dollars, and since I'm, a resident of Parkway, I know that the state bills are not cheap out here, so I appreciate everyone coming in and paying theirs. So.
As a member of the board, you need to make sure you lean on others who are subject matter experts. We have an amazing CFO, Patty Bedborough, who many of you may have met or listened to at various board meetings or at the recent Project Parkway meeting. You need to lean on the subject matter experts when it comes to things like budgeting. I am not a subject matter expert on budgeting. But because we have one, we are able to have the largest bond issue coming up in Parkway's history. We are fiscally responsible. We've gotten ourselves out of debt. We have a AAA bond rating. And that is because Parkway as a board and as the administration has leaned on the subject matter experts and have utilized their expertise with regards to budgeting. And that is something that I would continue.
Agreed. only one question about money. It must mean that folks think we're in a pretty good place financially, and I think we are. Jeff made some of these comments, but we have incredible financial solvency right now due to the leadership of Dr. Marty and CFO Barbero. And because of that, we're in a great place. We do have the AAA bond rating, and this gives us the chance to do a lot of really important things. From an infrastructure improvement standpoint, of course, we have aging buildings that need to be cared for, but also facilities and capital improvements. You know, the Project Partway discussions, putting in beautiful new swimming pools are going to happen, new playgrounds, being able to put programs in place that can attract and retain the best possible teachers. I think we're in a great place financially due to wonderful stewardship and leadership that's been in place, and I'd be proud to be part of that continued tradition because it is, in fact, a strength of Parkway.
Well, one of the boards that I've served on was my condominium complex board, and it was because I wanted to make sure that our dues were being used appropriately and efficiently. So I'm I'm not a subject matter expert on financials, but it is definitely an area of interest. We all pay money to make sure that these schools are run, and they should be run efficiently. It's a huge concern of mine.
Right. Yeah, Parkway has had tremendous fiscal responsibility. You can't argue that. I think our budget is close to $250 million at this point, maybe a little less, but it's a big number. One of the things that I believe separates me from some of the rest of folks out there is that I've run major companies. I've put together budgets. I put together strategic plans around fiscal responsibility. We bought new buildings. We built new buildings. We've installed new product. We've bought new product. I think that having that skill set will be a tremendous asset to the board, and I believe that what we have ahead of us, which is passing this bond measure for $265 million, is tremendously important. We cannot lose sight of that, and we all, whether we're elected or not to this board of directors, we all need to support that to make sure that our schools move forward, that we can be more competitive, and that we can attract the best and the brightest teachers and students and administrators. Thank you.
Okay. No, I think we still, did you answer that question?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Kind of losing track here. Well, this will be my last question prior to your final statements. What do you believe is the number one issue that Parkway needs to address in the next 3 years, and what will be your role in that? And we will start with you.
To narrow it down to one thing, obviously, as I've said before, I think Parkway is doing a great job as a district. I think our biggest goal is on the diversity, equity, and inclusion area. Again, we have over 40% of our student population as diverse. We need to make sure, as times change, that not just minorities, but children with disabilities, dyslexia is an issue in the United States, that we are giving all of our students the opportunities to succeed. Again, there's not a one-size-fit-all approach to that. It is a long-term process, and perhaps 3 years is enough. I don't know. But we need to look at these things and to make sure that our student body, all of our students, are getting what they need to succeed, no matter what differences they may have.
No doubt, Jeff. I think equity and inclusion is of paramount importance, and it would be important for me every year that I served on the board. However, I think acutely right now, the most important thing that we need to focus on is just recovering from the pandemic. And what does that mean? I think it means identifying those areas of academic deficit that exist, focusing on bringing them up to the high level of Parkway standards that we've become used to. I think it means going out and looking across the entire student body and finding the most vulnerable who might be affected by mental health issues, where they are facing increased anxiety or perhaps areas of diminished self-worth. Finding those kids, identifying them, and getting interventions in place so that they can feel healthy and contribute to, again, as students and learn in the best possible way that they can. So for me, that's an area that's front and center, and that's an area where I'd want to give a tremendous amount of focus over the next intermediate term.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. What do you believe is the number one issue that Parkway's School District needs to address in the next 3 years, and what will be your role in that if you are elected?
In the next 3 years. Well, again, the main reason why I'm running is just to make sure that we stay focused on one thing, and that's just education. And one of the things I'd like to move forward, and again, Scott's talked about that, is preparing kids to leave high school and have good quality paying jobs. You know, he talked to me a lot about apprenticeship programs. I'm a big fan of, you know, you can take coursework, like myself, I'm a certified insurance counselor. They can start taking those courses in high school, go out and get a very good job, and the insurance industry is starving for young people. And then, you know, again, they keep talking about the emotional, you know, damage that's been done. So again, I go back to the kids need to work out. We need to facilitate that.
Yeah, if we're looking at a 3-year window, one of the biggest fears that I think most people and stakeholders have in our district is the teachers that are leaving, the administrators that are leaving at a record pace. And this is not just our district, it's a national problem. You know, when we talk about teacher pay, we are right there when it comes to the initial pay and where they start when we hire them. One of the things that I believe that I would want to push the union to do is fight for the teachers to have better pay increases based on merit. Not just on an idea, but on merit. I believe that that's tremendously important for us to keep our teachers, value our teachers, put them on a pedestal. They are the major stakeholder, along with our students and our parents in the district. Without focusing on this, all of the other stuff that we want to talk about, which feels good and is good for the district, it doesn't work. We don't remain that district that sets the bar for all other folks to follow. We start to fall behind ourselves. We have to support the teachers. We have to figure out how to do that. And in the teacher conversation, we also have to look at the nurses. With this pandemic plan that we have, the nurses are underpaid, and we've got to figure out how to advocate for them. Thank you.
Mr. Rickey?
Well, this is tough because you're asking for the number one. If I have to really say the number one thing, it'd have to be the students, because that's the reason we're all here. And I understand that it's difficult, and we need to, support the teachers and the nurses and the support staff, but at the end of the day, we're all here because of the students. So I would say the number one issue would be, how can we focus on making sure that young people understand their role in the next steps, post-secondary education. The best example I can give is the Jennings School District. The Jennings School District has a 100% rate of putting all their students into post-secondary education, and they make sure all of them do it. So I ask ourselves, why can't we as Parkway have a 100% rate for all of our young people if Jennings can do this too? What are they doing different than what we could be doing? That's the question I want to leave with everyone thinking right now.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes my questioning part, and now we will give you an opportunity to have to make a final statement for 2 minutes each. And I'm going to start with Mr. Winfrey. I'm sorry you had to come right into this, but
Yes, I love to
I'll
write.
give you a minute to think about that. And we'll do that, and then we will conclude. And I'll just say now, since I'll let him think for a minute. I apologize to someone who asked a question and did not get that asked. I tried to combine as many as I can. However, if the candidates are willing, perhaps after the forum, you'd have an opportunity to speak directly to a candidate if you have a specific question for a candidate. I had a couple here that I did not get to. Okay, so Mr. Winfrey, are you ready to go?
Yes.
2 minutes.
Really, to kind of boil down my 3 years at Parkway as a substitute teacher, being in the trenches, this is really a great district. I mean, you guys really shouldn't be worried about the curriculum. The young people here are exceptional. They work the hardest, the kindest people in general I've ever met in my entire life. And I can't emphasize that enough. The real issue here is, how can we help these young people with their mental health? How can we take these young people to the next level? Because right now, a big issue that I see is that every teacher thinks that his or her class is the only class the young people have right now. And so we really need to listen and be able to communicate effectively as a district, to really engage everyone. And that's really why I'm here, because like I said, the biggest thing about my education that I took away from the University of Missouri St. Louis is how important it is for all of us to have a collaborative effort and to focus on why we're really here. I mean, we're all suffering. You know, the young people are suffering, the teachers are suffering, the support staff are suffering, everyone's suffering. But at the end of the day, we really need to put our differences aside and focus on the young people. How can we best help them? How can we best support them? How can we best make sure that they have options and they have a future out of high school? And that's what this is all about. Thank you.
Mr. Spielberg?
Oh, good. Things we didn't talk about tonight that I feel are important to the district. Civic learning, financial literacy, nurses' pay, vocational training, House and Senate bills 1750 and 1585, students with disabilities, soft skills training, volunteerism. Those are big, big, juicy topics we need to cover. I love all the other things to talk about, but missing these tonight, I think, doesn't do us all a service. I think you should reach out to each of us and ask us where we stand on those subjects. Like Parkway, I do believe that setting higher expectations creates brighter futures. My focus, if elected, we talked about teacher pay. That's important, but we do need to laser focus on our curriculum, our core curriculum, such as math, history, science, English. Teachers are doing the best that they can. We need to give them more resources. Again, keeping our kids in the classroom. I know that it's daunting. I know what we've gone through, but that is so important. We see that. We see what it's done, and we see the damage it's done. Start to grow our financial literacy platform. It is there, but it needs to be more robust so that kids have real usable tools when they leave high school. We have to have that. A stronger focus on civics. If our kids don't understand how the election system works and how things are going, they are going to be influenced by social media, as we talked about earlier, by TikTok, by those things. It is the parents' responsibility, but it is also something that I valued growing up in Parkway, and I learned a ton about it, and I think it's important. We have to support our teachers and admin with continuous opportunities to train, learn, lead, and grow. On the 5th, I'm asking for your vote, and I appreciate the time tonight, and thank you to the League of Women's Voters. Sorry, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Butcher?
I guess in closing, you know, there's very little chance that I'm going to be elected. I mean, I don't have any signs. You know, I didn't get any donations. I'm donating my time. I don't have any endorsements. But there's a few people I've met here on the board tonight, and if they were elected, I would feel very good about the direction of the Parkway School District. Thank you, Tony and Scott.
Thank you. Mr. Reed?
I hope I've been very transparent tonight. I hope that I've come across showing you that I really do have the students and teachers and staff of Parkway's best interest at heart. And that includes all of them. So when I say that, I mean every type of student across the spectrum of learning, every type of student across the spectrum of diversity. Everybody at Parkway, I think, needs to have a great shot at moving forward, advancing their education, and becoming the best possible person they can when they graduate from the Parkway School District. I am a product of public schools. I patronize public schools by using them for my own children's education, and I think it is probably the most important institution that exists for the betterment of our society. It's of critical importance that there's good leadership and stewardship in charge of public schools, and I want to be a part of that. I've got a background in business where I've led divisions of multi-billion-dollar companies, where I've had full P&L responsibility, where I've had to make difficult decisions, where I've had to work with a cross-functional group to coalesce around an idea and then advance that idea forward. And I think those skill sets would become very handy in a school board setting. So I'd like you to consider voting for me this upcoming Tuesday, and I promise to put all of my effort into advancing Parkway School District.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters again for hosting, as well as the other candidates for attending. I think I've probably said this 1,000 times during my campaign. Parkway's an amazing district. It is. We've got over 17,000 students. Our graduation rate is over 96%. We are constantly ranked as one of the top 10 districts in the state. We we are great, and I want to continue that greatness. My goal as a volunteer for this position is to create a better Parkway in the future for our students, for our teachers, for our staff. No matter your race, your gender, your ethnicity, your religious belief, it doesn't matter. For those who don't have children in the district, why you should look to vote. Parkway has great tax rates with wonderful housing market. There are reasons to be in Parkway beyond just school. And those are also people that need to be looking at this race. Our main goal is our students, let's be honest, it is. But Parkway is a community, and we need to get back to that community that we kind of lost in the past couple of years. And all I can say is if elected, that I will use my platform as the board to help try and unite the community to make Parkway better going forward for everyone involved, students, teachers, staff, and residents of the community. So thank you.
Okay, thank you to all of our candidates for participating, and thanks to all of you. Let's give them a hand. I also want to thank our volunteers from the League of Women Voters, our timer, the ladies who collected the cards, and people that are back at the back table. If you found, give them a hand as well if you want to. If you found that this forum was useful, by the way, this is the 18th candidate forum that the League has sponsored this season. And if you found this forum to be useful, think about joining us. The League of Women Voters is not just for women. We have a lot of male members as well. And if you can't do that or don't care to do that, you could also make a modest contribution to pay for the services we provide to educate voters. We also produce, along with Post-Dispatch, this voter's guide, which we have a few copies of back here, that give you information on every election that's happening this round and all the future rounds that are coming up, and for all of the counties, not just St. Louis County, St. Louis City, Franklin, Jefferson, Warren, St. Charles County. So that's a great source of information. If you can't get that, you can get some of the same information online. You can go to vote111.org. You can put in your address, and it will give you 411, excuse me, what did I say, 911? Vote 411, don't do 911. Don't call 911, they won't answer. Vote411.org, and you put your address in. It will give you a personalized ballot that you will see when you go to vote. That will give you a chance to see who the candidates and the issues are that you're voting for. We have literature out here. We also provide speakers for groups. We have a speakers bureau. We study issues, and although we are not partisan, we do not take a position on any candidate. We do study issues and sometimes take positions in favor or opposing certain issues. So, of course, the most important thing is to vote and get your neighbors and friends to vote. Local elections affect all of us so much more, really, than some of the bigger elections do. We have so much more input into the local, and we are affected so much more directly by the people and folks that are elected. And I shout out to everyone who wants to be a part of any local agency, school boards and otherwise. So the polls will be open Tuesday, April the 5th from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. You do not need a government-issued voter ID. If you need to find out where your polling place is, you can call the St. Louis County Board of Elections. Their number is 314-615-1833, or go online. You can also call our League of Women Voters office at 314-966-6869. Someone will be there all before and during Election Day. And once again, I want to thank everybody and wish you all a very good night.